ChatGerry, My Own Stroke Experience and Relationships, to a Story of Handwriting with Dementia, number 1486, VPT Sharp 047, December 31, 2025. Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation. Category: Stroke and Neuroscience. Preface: several years ago, a story circulated online about a doctor at a geriatric center in Kyoto. According to the story, the doctor tracked patients over age 80 who showed little or no cognitive decline. He initially expected explanations related to genetics or diet. Instead, the story claimed he found one shared behavior: they all wrote by hand for at least 15 minutes every day. Not typing, not texting, physical pen on paper. He was quoted as saying that digital writing uses one brain pathway, while handwriting activates many more. The story further claimed that MRI scans showed handwriting forces the brain to coordinate motor control, spatial reasoning, and memory at the same time. Because the task cannot be automated, the brain remains engaged. Typing, once learned, relies largely on muscle memory. According to the story, a small study showed better memory and processing speed in people who wrote by hand compared to those who typed. The message was clear: handwriting is not nostalgia, but active construction of brain function. Disclaimer on social media science. This Kyoto story originated from social media and informal online sources. It's named individuals, quoted numbers, and claims of suppression. Cannot be independently verified through peer-reviewed journals or formal clinical trials. Therefore, it should not be treated as established scientific evidence. It is best understood as an illustrative narrative that raises a plausible, scientific question, not as confirmed research. Introduction. I could not locate any peer-reviewed publication confirming the specific Kyoto story or its reported statistics. However, the broader question behind it is legitimate. Modern neuroscience does show measurable differences in brain activation between handwriting and typing. For that reason, I decided to examine this question through my own systems-based medical framework and personal stroke recovery experience. Why the question matters. Even if the Kyoto story is not fully accurate, it raises an important question. Does handwriting engage the brain differently from typing, and could that difference matter for long-term brain health or recovery after injury? That question deserves serious consideration, even if the story itself remains unverified. A simple systems framework. In my medical research, I separate disease progression and recovery into two stages. The first is the fluid stage. Function remains adjustable. Processes can adapt. Improvement is possible. The second is the solid stage. Structural damage has occurred. Tissue is lost or scarred. Recovery becomes limited, and management replaces reversal. The transition between these two stages is what I call the fluid-solid regime switch. This framework applies to metabolic disease, stroke, and cognitive aging. One model, two regimes. In my Viscoplastic Medicine Theory, VMT, calculations, I use the same mathematical model and algorithms for both regimes. The difference lies in interpretation. The fluid perspective focuses on disease and its influential factors: flow, adaptation, and progression. The solid perspective focuses on rupture, collapse, and disease end-stage failure. Most of my VMT energy diagrams describe the fluid phase. End-stage VMT energy contribution ratios reflect solid failure phase. Handwriting versus typing in the fluid stage. Typing is fast and efficient. Once learned, it becomes largely automatic, and places relatively low demand on the brain. Handwriting is slower. Each letter requires conscious control of eye movement, hand pressure, and visual guidance. The brain remains engaged throughout the task. From a fluid stage viewpoint, handwriting produces more active neural flow. It creates useful stress while adaptation is still possible. Typing produces less once it becomes routine. This does not make typing harmful. It simply means handwriting asks more of a brain that can still respond. Repetitive exercise lies at the core of post-stroke recovery. Why effort matters. The brain follows a simple rule: what is used tends to be preserved. What is not used tends to weaken. Effortful activities are especially important during the fluid stage. They slow decline and support adaptation. Handwriting is effortful in a constructive way. It combines thinking, movement, and attention. It cannot be fully automated. This does not mean handwriting prevents disease. It means it supports healthier neural flow before irreversible damage dominates. After stroke and the regime boundary. After a stroke, part of the brain has crossed into the solid stage. That damage cannot be undone. However, surrounding regions and connected networks often remain fluid and adaptable. Recovery depends on strengthening what remains fluid before further solid damage accumulates. Handwriting fits this goal well. It does not repair damaged tissue, but it strengthens surviving pathways, coordination, and attention through repeated use. During my own stroke recovery, I used handwriting to record daily exercises and observations, not because of dramatic claims, but because it aligned naturally with this framework. Personal observations. Over the past 5 years, I have applied viscoplastopology concepts to more than 800 biomedical research topics, including over 200 related to stroke and dementia. After the initial 90 days of intensive stroke recovery, I noticed that, while a small portion of memory loss remained, around 2% to 5% of my old memories, my overall cognitive capability continued to improve. About 3 months after my stroke in June 2025, unexpected moments of recall appeared. Academic subjects learned 5 to 6 decades earlier resurfaced clearly. I also remembered a song I sang at age 8, nearly 7 decades ago. These quiet moments provided a personal demonstration of enduring neuroplasticity. Conclusion: the story linking handwriting and dementia may never be fully validated. It may remain an imperfect narrative shaped by social media, rather than formal science, yet its core question remains meaningful. Cognitive preservation and recovery are not governed solely by medications. They are shaped by daily behaviors that influence how much of the brain remains fluid. Before solid limits take over, handwriting is one such behavior. It is simple, low risk, and effortful in the right way. It does not promise reversal, but it supports engagement, coordination, and neural flow while recovery is still possible. From both a systems neuroscience perspective and personal experience, the value of handwriting lies not in dramatic claims, but in quiet consistency. It encourages the brain to work, adjust, and remain active, one page at a time. Disclaimer: I write this article not for fame, but to share what I have learned so others can understand health, prevent disease, and live better lives. This content is for educational reference only, and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this article freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights belong to the author, Gerald C.